Hey everyone, Rizzo here, and today I thought it'd be fun to make a quick little behind the scenes style video of my creative process for my most recent music video, Dead Ended. Now this won't necessarily be a tutorial video where I tell you exactly how to do everything I did in depth. It's just a fun little look behind the curtain at my creative process for those of you who've been asking me about this kind of stuff. So let's start from the beginning. When getting ready to make a music video, I like to get hooked on one specific beat. This is the beat that sells the idea. For this one, the very first thing I knew I wanted was the MX Garand ping synced to the drum beat right here. Like I said, I like to get fixated on one really great moment because from there, it leads into more neat ideas, which snowballs out of control into even more neat ideas, which then eventually becomes a music video. So once I have that one base idea, I drop the song and the appropriate audio files needed for the bit into a fresh Vegas project. I then line everything up, realize it doesn't sound just right, and then move things around for another hour or two until it's just right. There's a lot of fine tuning to be done for just a single bit, because if the audio is even a tenth of a second off, you can get a completely different sounding result. For example, let's move this Garand ping a little bit to the left. See? Even though I barely moved it, it sounds completely different. Now let's move it back to its original position. See? Now that one sounds great. Once I've got that one bit that sold me on the project finished, it's time to start a block out of sorts. From here, I drag every single one of the mapped sound files into the project and start placing them around randomly to sync them to the song's beat. At this stage in production, I have absolutely zero visuals to go on, besides maybe some placeholder trailer footage, but that's okay. The most important part of a music video for me is to get the audio of the song and game sound effects to harmonize in a way. Let's take this bit real quick, the Raps attack. This sounds amazing to me. The sound of the raps falling from the sky perfectly synergizes with the vocals of the song. This is why I do a sound design block out before anything else. If I can get everything to harmonize perfectly, then adding visuals to it should be relatively simple. One last thing to address is the fact that my Vegas project is a visual equivalent of a panic attack. That's because every single sound you hear in the video is added manually. Whether it's a gunshot, zombie scream, or simple environmental ambience, I do it all myself with the raw sound files extracted from Greyhound. It takes a long time, but now I don't have to pray that I got lucky while recording and that the gameplay audio will just so happen to fit perfectly. This way, I make my own luck. As for getting the shots themselves, this is where the real fun begins. Rather than use theater mode, I personally opt to record things live. Theater mode in Call of Duty just has this stiff, artificial feel that I don't really like. I like the more chaotic handheld feel that my method has. But hey, if you're more comfortable with theater mode, more power to you. It's just not my cup of tea is all. Now what I do is load up a match with a mod menu to help make things easier. For those curious, I use Capcom's Encore version 14 menu on the workshop, and it's great. When I load into the game, the first thing I do is turn on God mode and set up my keybinds to make everything easier in the future. I use a PS4 controller to record cinematic stuff, so I don't need to worry about my binds interfering with pre-bound keys. With these binds, I can hide my HUD, first-person model, change the timescale, and no-clip with the press of a key instead of having to type it in every single time. Now for a camera. Here, I like to give myself a heavier weapon like an LMG, so I'm not panning around too fast, and equip it with an ACOG optic through the command console. Why an ACOG optic? Well, that's because I don't like the lowest default FOV of 65. It's way too high and makes everything seem very zoomed out and unfocused. But let's just disable the HUD, hide the gun real quick, and aim down sight, and there we go. Now, whenever I aim my invisible weapon's sight, I have a low FOV camera with a little bit of depth of field. One more thing, I'd like to record all of my shots, and I mean all of them, at 25% of the normal speed. And that's because in Sony Vegas, you can speed up a clip by 400% without the use of plugins, which would change these recorded shots to normal speed. Usually, that's what ends up happening, but what if during editing I thought a particular shot would work better in slow motion, or I just needed to adjust the shot's pace to match up with the visuals and audio? Well, since I recorded in slow motion, I can easily adjust the clip speed without losing frames. An example of where I utilized this in the final video was the Argus lever flip. Let's jump back over to Vegas real quick. If I were to speed up this animation to 400%, which would equate to normal speed, it would simply be way too fast to fit with what I wanted. So I slowed it down just a wee bit to roughly 65% normal speed, and it fit perfectly. And I didn't lose any frames either. Okay, but how do I get some cool ass shots myself? Have any tips for that? To be honest, besides the basic cinematic rule of thirds and not having uninteresting empty spaces in your canvas, I got nothing. I personally don't even plan out many of my normal gameplay shots. Sure, I'll write them down in a notepad document on my other monitor so that I have a general idea of what to shoot while playing, but when I get in game, the actual execution of said shot is one of those, when you see it, you'll know it kind of things. With the normal gameplay shooting covered, let's talk about those more cinematic shots. Just a heads up, this part may get a bit wordy and confusing, so strap yourselves in. A large portion of this music video use shots that aren't normally possible in the vanilla version of the game. Shots like Richtofen drawing his Mauser, Nikolai boarding his Manticore mech, Dempsey getting into a melee tussle with a Mangler, etc. But how are those shots created, you may ask? Well, they're just simple model and animation swaps. Okay, it's not exactly simple per se, because there's a lot that goes into the creation of each shot, but that's the most basic version of the idea. Because I don't have the original Maya projects for the shots used in the video, we're just going to create a new shot right now. First and foremost, what characters do I want in the shot? I think Nikolai and a spooky little critter. Now, let's go animation hunting. After going through Black Ops 3 cinematic campaign animations, I ultimately settled on a vignette from the mission Vengeance, where a 54 Immortals thug slices up a civilian. And because I'm a massive zombies nut like most of you, I immediately went into fanboy mode and thought, okay, what kind of zombies flavor could I add to this? Ooh, wouldn't it be cool if the character had the Ascension sickle instead of a normal knife? And that's the kind of thinking that led to adding the Olympia in this shot instead of a KN-44, and replacing Nikolai's MR6 in the outro with an M1911. I try to put myself in the viewer's shoes and think, okay, what little addition would I, as an audience member, appreciate? Alright, back to creating the shot. So, I have my animations and character models I want to use all set up. Now comes the task of getting everything game ready. I prefix the zombies' joint names to prevent clashing issues later on, and export the zombie's death animation as a separate C anim. Now, I go back to the Nikolai scene, where he's slicing up nothing, drop the Skelly into the scene, prefix his joint names with the same prefix from the C anim, import said C anim file, and boom! Everything comes together just like that. Now, let's give Nikolai his sickle. Let's just adjust that a wee bit so he's holding it properly. Yeah, that looks good. The last part is to create a master joint that I can attach both characters to. Then I export the animation for the mod tools, reset the scene, and export the now T-pose character group X model as well. I guarantee that there's a better, less convoluted way to do this, but there's a certain satisfaction that comes with making some hacky bullshit that really has no business working. Alright, mod tools time. Now here, I already have the materials for the character model set up with the help of the material extracts from HydraX. A really great program, by the way. So, all that's left is to replace the files the animation is calling upon with the ones I just made. Let's refresh the animation, and voila! But we're not done just yet. The finishing touch is to add FX note tracks, so that things like blood splatters and stuff like that will actually play in-game. I simply go frame by frame, add the effect I want to play and on what part of the body, and that's it. So hopefully, provided I've done everything right of course, when I trigger the animation to play in-game, the skeleton's body will radiate electricity, he'll have blue eyes, and he'll bleed when he gets cut. Let's close Ape, compile the mod, and load up the game real quick to find out. Alright, time for the moment of truth. Let's just go into third person real quick, type in take all to trigger the idle animation, and hell yeah, dude. Now all that's left is to play around with the position of the character and the third person camera controls until I find the exact angle I want. So I've talked about the thought process behind the editing, how I filmed the gameplay, and of course, creating custom cinematics. The last thing to mention is audio and visual touch-up before the final render. I go ahead and listen to the entire video from beginning to end with no interruption to make sure that everything has a natural flow, I guess. Then, once I've made sure the audio side of things are all good, I apply color correction to my shot footage. And with that, that's about all I've got. Like I said at the top, this wouldn't be an in-depth tutorial brimming with knowledge on how to do this all yourself, but instead, just a little sneak peek behind the curtain for those who are curious. I hope you all enjoyed this little behind-the-scenes video, and hopefully I'll be back sometime within the next year or two with some new scripted content. So I'd just like to thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and take care.